There are moments in politics when someone speaks so boldly, so unapologetically, that the entire room freezes. Not because of theatrics, not because of noise, but because the truth hits harder than any headline ever could. And that's exactly what happened when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett decided she wasn't taking anyone's intimidation. Not from pundits, not from billionaires, and definitely not from the nation's top law enforcement officer. What unfolded wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a full-scale demolition of an abuse of power that had gone unchecked for far too long.
Thank the chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting attorney general go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information, and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook, because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him, because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman, that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you.
And within seconds, viewers could tell this wasn't the kind of speech that gets forgotten. This was the kind that rewrites the conversation. For weeks, tensions had been building. Political fights were everywhere, hearings were turning into battlegrounds, and high-ranking officials seemed more interested in scoring points than protecting the country. But everything changed the moment Attorney General Pam Bondi went on cable news, what Crockett referred to as faux news, and delivered what many interpreted as a direct threat toward her. A threat not whispered behind the scenes, but broadcast for the entire nation to hear. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't professional. It was targeted, bold, and deeply inappropriate for someone occupying the most powerful legal office in the land. The kind of move that raised one chilling question. If the Attorney General is willing to use a national platform to intimidate a sitting member of Congress, what else might she be willing to do? That was the spark. But what came next was the wildfire. When the hearing opened and Jasmine Crockett took her seat, no one expected what she was about to unleash. With one single line, she shook the room and shattered the script that her opponents were clinging to. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. Maybe we can move on. Instantly, the air shifted. That wasn't just a statement. It was a surgical strike. A reminder that the endless recycling of political ghosts, culture war talking points, and irrelevant distractions was nothing more than an excuse to avoid real work. And Crockett wasn't interested in reruns. She was there to drag the conversation out of the past and force everyone to face the present. From that moment, she held complete control of the room. And she didn't waste a second. She called out the fundamental problem that has been poisoning the country. Leaders who treat Congress like a courtroom, a stage, or a battleground rather than a place to legislate. It wasn't an insult. It was an observation laid out in plain sight. Congress is supposed to create laws, not act out televised versions of political grudges. And Crockett's frustration was unmistakable. Hearing after hearing had turned into a circus of accusations, speculation, and finger-pointing, while real legislation fell to the side. She knew it, everyone in the room knew it, and millions watching at home knew it too. But Crockett didn't stop there. She pivoted into a deeper truth, one that every American needed to hear. The increasing threats faced by lawmakers had reached a point that should terrify everyone. People across the political spectrum were being harassed, stalked, and threatened at unprecedented levels, and Crockett was brutally honest about why. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidental. It was the direct result of toxic rhetoric, amplified by people who should be calming tensions, not inflaming them. Crockett pointed out something that had been whispered but rarely said aloud. Political violence doesn't come out of nowhere. It is taught, fed, and encouraged by those who benefit from fear and division. And that's what made the threat from Bondi so disturbing. The Attorney General isn't supposed to play politics. She isn't supposed to take sides. She isn't supposed to go on national television and target someone for speaking freely. Crockett told the room exactly why this crossed the line. When the highest law enforcement officer goes after a lawmaker, people watching at home don't see nuance. They see permission. Permission to attack, permission to harass, permission to believe that dissent is something to punish rather than protect. And Crockett refused to let that slide. Not for a minute. Not for a second. She spelled it out with clarity. People are watching. They are consuming this information. They are believing it. Those words carried weight because they were rooted in reality. When powerful figures play games with justice, ordinary people start acting like the rules no longer apply. And Crockett wasn't just defending herself. She was defending the idea that democratic systems only survive when officials treat their power with responsibility. Then came one of the most jaw-dropping pivots of the entire hearing. Crockett brought Elon Musk into the conversation, not as a side note, but as an example of how wealth can warp accountability. She called him a crook, laid out her issues with the way he treats workers, and highlighted how rumors have circulated for years that he's received special treatment from federal institutions. She didn't present those claims as fact. She made it clear they were grievances shared by people who see the same patterns she does. And she sharpened the point further. Why does someone with billions get protections ordinary Americans never see? Why can he fire workers with impunity, secure federal resources with ease, and get government protection that others can only dream of? It was a question many have asked, but few have asked publicly in such a confrontational way. Crockett wasn't attacking randomly. She was drawing a straight line between unchecked power, political favoritism, and the erosion of public trust. When billionaires operate without consequence and law enforcement officials act like political enforcers, resentment grows. People begin to believe the system is rigged. And Crockett made sure that point landed. But what truly separated Crockett's speech from the usual political back and forth was the moral clarity she used to frame it. This should not be left versus right. It should be right versus wrong. It was a sentence that instantly resonated because it stripped away all the noise. Politics has become a battlefield where people prioritize party over principle, victory over truth, and loyalty over law. Crockett refused to participate in that. She made it clear that her fight wasn't about scoring points. It was about defending the basic idea that government should serve everyone fairly. That moral argument hit even harder when she turned personal. Crockett shared a story that explained exactly why she sees the world the way she does. When she became a public defender, she walked into the office with no criminal defense experience. She didn't pretend otherwise. She didn't hide it. Instead, she walked up to her future boss and told him to hire her because she was black. Not because she wanted advantage, because she understood something essential. Representation isn't symbolic. It changes outcomes. It changes trust. It changes whether people feel seen when they stand before the law. Crockett knew she could walk into a courtroom and reach clients who were ignored by others, who didn't trust the system, who needed someone who understood the weight of being dismissed or judged before opening their mouth. And she delivered, serving her clients with dedication, compassion, and strength. That's the woman Bondi tried to threaten. And that's the woman who stood up in that committee hearing and refused to be intimidated. Crockett made it clear she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for everyone who has been dismissed, marginalized, or silenced by systems built to elevate the powerful and restrain the rest. As the hearing continued, the reaction online grew louder. Clips spread instantly, with millions praising Crockett's courage and composure. Viewers could feel the authenticity of her words, and for many, it was a rare moment of witnessing a lawmaker speak with unfiltered honesty instead of political polish. Meanwhile, Bondi faced a wave of criticism from people who felt her comments were reckless, inappropriate, and dangerous for someone in her position. And while Bondi hadn't responded directly, observers speculated that the backlash may force her to reconsider how she uses her public platform moving forward. Crockett's message was clear. Leadership isn't about titles. It's not about networks, influence, or a big TV audience. It's about integrity. It's about standing firm when powerful people try to silence you. And it's about reminding the country that the law is supposed to protect the people, not threaten them. This moment became more than just a heated exchange in Congress. It became a symbol, a warning, a rallying cry. And for millions who watched it unfold, It was a reminder that there are still leaders willing to call out injustice no matter who's responsible for it. If you believe voices like Jasmine Crockett's matter, voices that stand up to intimidation, corruption, and the misuse of power, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap like, and drop a comment below. Let me know what moment hit you the hardest. And stay tuned, because this story is far from over.